Good morning, and yes, good morning again. Happy Saturday to you. I'm telling you, we're coming down to the end of 2022. We're actually in the first week of December. It's the last month of 2022, and what a experience we've had this year. I want to say welcome to all those of you who are joining us by way of Facebook Live. We certainly want to welcome you this morning. Thank you for tuning in. Also want to welcome those of you who are tuning in by way of YouTube this morning. I want to say thank you for those YouTube supporters. Listen, just keep in mind that YouTube is a wonderful way for any of these sessions that you have missed. I've got a great IT team. They have certainly been phenomenal in making sure that we capture all these sessions. I just want to say thank you. And if you're joining by way of phone, we certainly want to welcome you again as well. Here is a quick way for you to join us this morning. Good morning to my sister Joyce, all the way down in Snow Hill, North Carolina. I love you this morning for tuning in. Listen, if you are joining us for the first time today, you can always find us on the YouTube handle, Dr. K.O. Williams Space Ministry, or on our YouTube channel. If you don't have Facebook or you want someone to join who doesn't have Facebook, they can always go to our YouTube channel, Dr. K.O. Williams Space Ministry, and they can find us there as well. We also have a phone line if a person just wanted to call in mobilely while they're moving around. Please take a quick moment and look down in the bottom left, your voice. It is a wonderful way. If you've got a topic you want some coaching on, we'd be too glad to hear your comments and thoughts as well. You can email us at bit.ly/RealTalk Your Voice. You can send us your comments and suggestions there. Keep in mind, we only have 60 minutes and we try to go in hard as quick as we can. Listen, boy, have we got something to share with you on today. I want you to try your best to send this to someone and ask them to join us this morning. This is 60 minutes addressing life's issues, straight, honest, transparent conversation. It's practical tools. We've got some tools to give you today as well to keep putting in your toolbox. So the goal is, whatever the situation is, maybe there's something in your toolbox to help you to get through it. Let's get started today. We've been talking about this wonderful concept around church hurt. I don't know who it is that I can speak to on today, but let me tell you something. If you have done any work at all, if you've decided to work and do something positive and constructive, you need to know that in that process is going to be some level of offense somewhere, somehow, and from someone. So I want to ask you today, don't be alarmed. But when it happens, what we want to do is to give you some tools to be able to say, you know what, I've got something to help me to navigate through this. Church hurt. This is what we wanted to talk about. We've been dealing with this the last couple of weeks, and we wanted to push that envelope just a little bit further today. Let me give you some quick housekeeping. If you are with us today, listen, send me a good morning, just like my sister did, and we'll give you a shout out as we go along the way this morning. I'm dealing today specifically with, we've been talking about identifying what church hurt is, but today I want to give you a suggestion on what to do with the church hurt. It's one thing to say, yes, you're on my road. I acknowledge that I have been introduced to this community called church hurt. But today I want to give you some practical suggestions and recommendations on what to do once you've been hurt in the church. Listen, I want to tell you something. If we tried to demonstrate to you in the past sessions, you certainly can go back and view those, but you're not the first person to decide you're going to work in the church, and then somebody somewhere gives you an encounter, an experience that's so bad until you make the decision, I'm done with church and I'm done with church people. I want to tell you, that's not the answer. And I want to help you today to navigate through that process. But I also want to tell you that you can be able to use this same principle in your job. Not only Are people hurt in the church? Sometimes you can be working on the job. I know people in my workspace right now that have been hurt, devastated by decisions of others on the job. And so I want to tell you that these principles work not only for those church hurts. Good morning, Sister Janie, all the way up in the Maryland area this morning. What a delight it is to have you join us again this morning. I want to tell you that not only are they practical guides for the church, you can use these also for your work. But let me tell you, it goes further than that. Listen, may even be in your family. If you're dealing with family hurt, listen. The fact is that when you encounter a bad experience, these principles work irrespective of which application. Yes, you can even have them in your friendships with friends. Uh, who is it that can say, Williams, listen, I had a bestie, a best friend, and out of nowhere, here comes this bad experience with the friend. And guess what? It affects how I have friendships now. I'm talking today to someone who has been dealing with a bad experience, a bad encounter, which basically has caused you to write off that everybody is going to be put at bay. No one else is going to get past this fence. I know I'm talking good already on a Saturday morning. Somebody said, listen, that person hurt me, and I've got this wall up now. And as a matter of fact, no one else is going to be able to get past this wall. But I got news for you. You need to put the wall down. You need to open the gate up, because the reality is, as we've already said in past sessions, when you put the gate up, it does two things. It keeps things out, but it also keeps things in. So if you've got the wrong things on the inside of that gate, listen, it's nothing that's going to be productive for you. And so you have to be able to have tools to make sure that when you close the gate, you got the right things. Lord have mercy on a Saturday morning inside the gate, because sometimes you can have bad feelings, bad emotions, bad thoughts that are inside that gate. And I come today to tell somebody, make sure you got the right things on the inside of the gate. Listen. I want to help somebody today that if you have been encountered, I know I'm talking good to somebody today. We've been dealing over the last couple of weeks around people who have been doing good things. Listen, let me put a quarter in the meter and talk right there for a moment. I'm not talking about people who are going around doing bad things, doing evil things, doing just traumatic things. I'm talking about people who have decided to do good things, working in the church, trying to help people, trying to serve God, trying to do good spiritual, morally upright things. And in the process of doing those things, you encounter a hurt of some kind. I stopped by to tell you today that the good news is you can rebound from that bad experience, but you got to have some tools in your toolbox to kind of help you to navigate through it. And so today, let's get started on a couple of things. I've got 2 or 3 areas that I want to touch on today before we push off. But I want to start with this book. If you've never received it, I want you to put this book as a resource in your arsenal. It's called Let It Go by T.D. Jakes. Yes, it's right here. It's on your screen. It is a wonderful tool that if you've had any encounters with this process of how to get past an infraction, how to get past someone hurting you, you need a copy of this book. Now, this PowerPoint today is going to help get you through 1 or 2 of those chapters, but you certainly would want to go back and try to put this book into your arsenal. The book is called Let It Go. Forgive so you can be forgiven. Ooh, I'm talking good on a Saturday morning. The reality is that when you let it go, you're setting yourself up to be restored. And the reality is also that when you hold on to it, am I talking to anybody today? It's actually like an internal cancer. It will sit right there and churn and churn and churn. And in the end, this is the most saddest part of what happens when you don't let it go. The infractor or the offender, they've gone on to offend someone else. And you're stuck back here trying to make sense of the offense. Guess what? At some point, you have to decide to let it go so that you yourself can actually become restored. That's how it works. So let's talk about what it means to let it go. I'm going to deal with one of the chapters in this book on today, and what I love about it is it talks about this thing called the construction zone. Let's look at this PowerPoint for just a little bit. I'm ready. And so it says let it go. That's the name of the book. And let's just look at matter of fact, what we're going to be looking at today is chapter 8. Trust doesn't come easy. Next slide, please. And so let's look at this thing called a construction crew. Think about this. When you have something that has been broken or something that needs to be rebuilt, you need a construction team. You need a construction crew. Have you ever looked at somewhere that's building a new house? You see all kind of people in there trying to make some construction. Well, that's the same way it is in this particular application today. Next slide, please. When you're trying to build something, you need a crew. And that's what I want to talk about today. Look at this seat. This is a basic, real nice, eloquent, upscale. Matter of fact, I seen a pastor on a birthday, and they were sitting up on a diocese in a very fancy chair, something like this. This chair looks very inviting. You would agree if you saw this in a building, or if you saw this at a church, or if you saw this at your job. It looks like it was a chair for some dignified person, someone that had some level of fluency to them. Next slide, please. But here's the thing. Not always what it looks like. Can I talk to someone today and tell you that as we look at this particular chair, as we look at the offense that we have, after we have identified an offense and have accepted the offender's apology, we often find ourselves in a unique position to rebuild something that we watch crumble before our very eyes. And so it looks like a building that appears sound and solid through and through, well built and well supported. And then somebody, suddenly we find ourselves gasping for air as it collapsed from within. What I'm trying to suggest today is that when you have an offense by someone, it looks real good on the outside. I know many people, I'm thinking about some right now. They've been offended in the church. Listen, someone, whether it was the pastor, the leaders, some member of the church ministry offended the person. And now you're coming to church. You look good on the outside. But my friend, the truth of the matter is, if we look and open the door to the window of your soul, we would see a person who is broken and gasping for air as we watch them collapse from the inside. I want to talk to someone today. It's time to take off the mask, and it's time to deal with that infraction in a way that sets you free. What I want to do today is to set you free. The offender, they've gone on, and guess what? Most of the time they're going on and offended someone else, and you're stuck trying to rebuild from within, dressed up, looking good, smelling good, talking good, all that on the outside, only to discover if we open the door to the window of your soul, we would find a person who is still broken from within. Next slide, please. And so as we deal with this, I want to talk about some construction materials. What I want to deal with today is this thing called trust, because sometimes people are offended, they're broken, they're hurt, and then the offender comes back and say, what's your problem? Why are you still stuck back there? Don't you trust me? You're a Christian. Don't you know that you're supposed to get over it? And I want to talk today about one word, TRUST. Yes, trust is not about giving someone the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes we get it mixed up with some other emotions, but to the contrary, trust is based on a behavior. Oh my goodness. I want to tell you today, don't let nobody run game on you. Don't let nobody try to fool you and play mind games with you and say, if you trust me, just get over it. No, it doesn't work that way. The truth of the matter is simple. Trust is based on a behavior. Trust means being able to predict what other people will do and what situations will occur. Did you hear that? Listen, the reality is when you trust, that simply means that there's a consistent, constant, repetitive behavior. Trust is built on the foundation of our past experiences. There it is with an individual or a corporation. There's no way you can say you trust and you have unpredictable behavior. Yes, I'm talking directly to someone today who's trying to make sense of an offense. The first thing is you have to land and start building on trust. Trust. Trust, my friend, has little to do with loving or liking an individual. Oh, we're getting somewhere now. Yes, absolutely. When you say you trust, it has nothing to do with loving or liking the person. It has everything to do with the comfort level whereby you sink your full weight into that person. In other words, your constant behavior determines your trustworthiness. Let's go to the next slide, please. And as we look, who? Think about the two chairs I just showed you. That first chair was so inviting. Oh, yes, it was so eloquent. It was so elaborate. You felt good to walk up and sit in it. Matter of fact, you felt like you was a celebrity by sitting in it. But guess what? Who in their right mind would go and sit on the chair to the left? I know I would not without some level of reservation. Or would you walk up into a room and sit on a sofa that looks like this, broken down already? You can see it's slumped down. Listen, damaged already. No, next slide. If somebody says have a seat in those chairs, what we tell you is something inside your mind says that chair doesn't look like it deserves to be sat in, and it certainly doesn't look like it's won my confidence to sit in it. We place the weight of our body into the arms of the furniture because we have reason to expect it would hold us up. Why? Because it looks inviting. If the past experiences hasn't been a good one, then we wearily or cautiously approach the piece of furniture, wondering. There it is right there. You're wondering if it had been repaired in such a way that now bears our weight. We are justified, and I want to talk to somebody today. You are justified in having a natural reaction to those past experiences that causes us to lose trust, to lose confidence and belief, and approach the chair with caution. All I'm telling you is that, listen, if it happened and then you have not received behaviors that will replace those bad experiences, then naturally it is a human instinct for you to say, I still don't have trust in that piece of furniture to know that it will hold me up. Next slide, please. I'm trying to tell you today that we put our trust in a chair. Think about it. Very few of us would return to that chair and place our full weight on it again without some degree of caution. If you sat in that chair to the left and fell and hurt yourself, when the next day came, something inherently inside your internal self says, hey, don't sit in that chair if it looks like it hadn't been repaired. And I'm saying to you today that when you have a hurt, an internal traumatic experience, and there's been nothing, my friend, to suggest that there's been some repairing or construction, we try and sit on a chair again, something in our minds would graciously remind us of what had happened the last time, and common sense would make us proceed with some level of caution. People try to run game on you, talking about why are you acting so reluctantly? Well, I'm acting reluctantly because I don't see anything that would suggest that there's been a change. I'm talking good to somebody today. That, listen, if you've had an infraction, if you've had a traumatic experience, what causes you to move from that feeling is your notion that there's been some demonstration that there is been some repair. After all, who wants to fall and bust your caboose a second time? I'm not going to raise my hand for that. The sense of the matter says that we are justified. Hear me good in saying we have a natural reaction to those past experiences that causes us to lose trust confidence, and we approach the chair with caution. It is simply to say, don't get it twisted. Listen, if you inflicted trauma, don't get upset with me if I approach you with caution. I haven't dismissed you. I just simply said I'm going to approach you with caution. Next slide, please. And so here is what we have. Healthy relationships. The responsibility or the onus of restoring trust lies largely in the part of the offender. In other words, such trust can only be restored when a history of a catalog of continual, consistent, unwavering behavior that supports more uh, substantially thank the past encounters. What I'm saying to you is until the vast majority of the recent data replaces the pattern, we are not likely to trust again. I'm telling someone, in other words, the new building must be inspected prior to occupancy. Who am I talking to? You cannot have a new construction building without it having been passed an inspection. And I'm talking to somebody today that if you have encountered a past traumatic experience, when the repair is done, there has to be some inspection. And so many people, they get a little uptight, they get weary, they get all these things because they want you to look past the infraction and say, on to the next. And it does not work like that. We know for sure if you've ever built anything, you have to have a permit for it. And the reason for the permit is for that the new construction has to be inspected. Next slide, please. And so I want to suggest to you, you can't make yourself trust what you don't trust. It's just that simple. Any more than you can make yourself love a person you don't love. It's just that the reality is that there is something inherently built in our inner DNA that says, I don't trust you. And the only way to move past that untrust is there has to be a demonstration of constant, continual, repetitive, habitual data. That is simply to say, what's your data points today? There it is. A tool to put in your toolbox. If you're struggling with an offense and someone is trying to ask you to get past it, all you have to do is ask yourself, where are my data points? You can't say that you're trustworthy and then you keep continuing to create these scenarios that suggest that you can't be trusted. For example, you have this thing about being late and you then work through it, and then you say, can you trust me? Can you give me another chance? And then soon as you say yes, here comes another tardiness. Listen, my friend, you have to create new data points. I know I'm talking good to somebody today. And so I'm telling you, it's not in you. The fault is not in you. You didn't create the offense. You didn't create the traumatic experience, but you are a recipient of it. And one way to get past it is you have to learn to watch the data points. I'm talking today to someone, my good friend, Bishop John Park, listen, one of the preachingest men on 2 feet. God bless you, out of Salisbury this morning. Sister Denise Farmville, all the way out of Jacksonville. I thank you for exactly. Thank you, Sister Farmville, for that confirmation today. Listen, what I'm telling you is, if you're going to have a new experience, you have to search for the data points. I'm tired of people being manipulated by the manipulators and their masterminds of what they love because, oh yes, I'm talking good today and maybe you're offended by what I'm saying. But the truth of the matter is the Bible is true. A tree is known by the fruit it bears. And I'm stopping today to talk to somebody that you don't have to try to let nobody run games on you. All you have to do is watch the data points. There it is. Next slide, please. And here we have it. After that, trust when damaged can be rebuilt, but the trust builders has to be willing to punch the clock and do the time. Woo! I know I'm talking good today. To rebuild what was lost in the fall. If you fall, you have to be able to punch the clock. Next slide, please. I want to talk good today because somebody today needs to understand that you can get past the offense, but the reality is both people got to be willing to punch the clock and go to work. Next slide. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? There's some key takeaways I wanted to touch in on today. Trust is the behavior, not an emotion. Don't let anybody get it twisted today. We have emotions that change. For example, you feel full, you eat food, oh, I'm so full. And then those emotions change 3 hours later. You're hungry again. Emotions change. Emotions come, emotions go. But behaviors are consistent. Trust is a behavior. And I came to tell you today, the reason the victims can't bear the brunt, the reason the victims cannot bear the brunt of responsibility, trust again, because one step back will reveal that they are already willing to trust in the past and not get burned for it. The reality is, trust can only be formed from the basis of experiences we have had. Trust is based on experiences. In order to rebuild trust, my friend, the one who has destroyed the relationship structure must now create an atmosphere in which what they say and what they do align with each other. It is simply to say, don't just talk about it, but you also have to be about it. Otherwise, the entire building site may be destroyed if the offender once again betrays you. Those are some key takeaways around Let It Go. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk, next slide, fool me once. Well, here it is. We all know about the Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. You can see some of the devastating pictures, how they created sandbags on the left after the levees broke and all that water came rushing into the lower ninth. Next slide, please. And so what we find is a reasonable request. Most psychologists would agree that the best predictor of future behavior is past experiences. Think about this. If you met John, who had been married 5 times, and all past wives were mysteriously murdered, it would be wise to keep your eyes on John. Just simply saying that the past is a good indicator of the future. If Mr. Leadfoot molested his daughter, his niece, and his cousin, then please forgive me, my friend, if I don't ask him to babysit for me. No, I want to suggest to you that your past experiences are an indicator of your future behaviors. Do you really have to think about whether to ask your bank robber's neighbor who just been paroled to make a deposit for you? What I'm telling you is, yes, uh, things change, but they change with constant, repetitive, redundant behavior. You have to go to the behavior. So it is a reasonable request. Next slide, please. Because we are all governed by our behavior. The bad news is trust takes time to rebuild. When you have the infraction, it takes time. When you have been hurt in the church, my friends, it takes time. But the good news is, with proper rebuilding, trust can and will be restored. Time to reestablish, but it takes time to reestablish itself. Most people who have been violated a trust have a tendency to minimize how long it takes to rebuild it. Isn't that amazing? So, in other words, the person who inflicts the offense, they're quick to tell you, get over it. Let's go to dinner. Let's go out. Let's go catch a movie. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. They are anxious to rebuild it quickly and become impatient if the victim takes longer than they think they should. Oh, that's worth saying again. Most of the times, the person who offends, they are anxious to rebuild it quickly. Hurry up, come on, let's go. And become impatient if you, the one who has been offended, say, you know what, I just need a little bit more time. Just need a little space. They get bothered because it seems like you're taking too long to move to the next step. The offenders don't seem to realize it's easier to repair the broken chair than it is to regain the confidence of the man who broke his hip bone from the last time the chair was given away. Can I say that again? When you offend someone, when you hurt someone, it's easy for you, but it's easier to go and repair the broken chair. In other words, take it to the woodsmith. Let them repair the chair. Oh, maybe they say come back tomorrow and the chair will be ready. It's easier for the chair to be repaired than it is for the man who sat in the chair and broke his hip bone for him to now have confidence to sit in that chair again. And I want to talk to somebody today. If you're the one that sat in the chair and the chair broke and you broke your hip bone, that is a process. Next slide, please. I got to move a little bit faster. All right. The next slide. So punching the clock. Next slide. So we've talked about that already. Next slide. They can't repair the loss of trust by the following. Listen to this. If you're the one who inflicted the pain, you caused the trauma, what I need to say to you is you can't repair it by this method of coercion, trying to buy somebody's trust. Trust is not bought, my friend. I want to say that again, that you can't buy trust. It has to be earned by constant, repetitive, redundant behavior. You cannot say that you passed it and your actions are demonstrating and screaming loudly that you're doing the very same thing. No, a tree is known by the fruit it bears. And if you have inflicted an offense, you can't make it faster by running a guilt trip. Well, they say, how long you gonna keep making me pay for the same thing? Well, the truth of the matter is that's not the best way to get on the other side of broken trust. What you have to do is give the person space to create their own path of confidence. And then the last one, rushing them through the process. How much longer is it gonna take? They ask. And I say to you that when the trust is broken, it's a process. And that process is different for every single individual. No two people go through the process the same any more than any two people that are going through the grieving process. Think about this. Two ladies lose their son, and one lady is able to put it in perspective and regain her sense of normalcy. And another lady loses her son, and she's working her way through the grief process. It may take her 2, 3, 4, 5 years for her to really get back to a sense of normalcy. No two people go through the process the same way. The person who has violated the trust must be willing to walk down that long road to healing. I want to say it again. If you are the one who inflicted the offense, you cannot rush the person through the process lest you run the risk of what we call a traumatic setback. The last thing you want is to go halfway down that process and you rush the person and then they have a setback. It's counterproductive. If trust comes cheap, it isn't valuable and will likely re-injure itself again. I want you to take that into your toolbox today. If trust comes cheap, it isn't valuable and will likely re-injure itself again. Next slide, please. And so here we have it. Think about this. In other words, the reality of this slide is even from the time of 2005, when the levees broke, we now know that people in Louisiana, when it rains really bad, this sense of the past experience of Hurricane Katrina comes in their mind. Listen, think about this. Katrina caused 1,800 people, that's 1,800 people to die. and it caused $100 billion in damage. New Orleans was particularly hit hard due to the flooding. The reflections of what happened, whether expressed outwardly or not, is a real after effect of the violations. And it may take several storms for the homeowners who live by the levees to not run to the window and look out nervously, understandably. All I'm saying to you is, if it happens, the person has to have time to get through the process. Next slide, please. So here's the key takeaways. When one assumes that one is without fault, it becomes so easy to stone another. In other words, he who is without fault among us, let him cast the first stone. If we are to be forgiven, then we must be prepared to forgive and forgive others. If you can admit to the fact that you need forgiveness, then my question to you is, why won't you give it? Definitely not suggesting that forgiveness requires continued exposure to the ongoing abuse. This would be foolish as well as dangerous. What I'm suggesting to you is, let them go so that you may experience the same giddy freedom as the lame man at the gate called Beautiful. Ultimately, he found a freedom to his infraction. And I'm suggesting to you the same way. Next slide, please. This is the big takeaway from my presentation today. Close for business. We talked about this once, and I want to reiterate it again today. That if you have encountered some level of offense, here's a practical way to handle it. Next slide, please. So people run this mind game on you, and they say, well, if you love me, then you will come back to me. Or if you love me, then you will give me another chance. If you love me, then you'll let me take you out to dinner so we can get past this. But you can love them, their family, their friends. I just can't do business with them. Can I say that again? Some people need to adopt this phrase. I love them, their family. I just can't do business with them. Next slide, please. What you're saying, in essence, is this. You can love someone without giving them everything they ask for. Oh, my goodness. I want to put my weight on that right there. The fact is right here in this book called Let It Go. Bishop T.D. Jakes argues that you can love someone without giving them everything they ask for. And in fact, when we try to maintain someone's love by giving in to their demands, we oftentimes kill the relationship or the trust. No doesn't mean I don't love you. And in fact, there is what is called tough love. Real love has nothing to do with trust. Real love has nothing to do with forgiveness. It is highly possible, listen to this, to love someone and still not trust them. Yes, you can show love to someone, but you still cannot trust them. I know it to be true. And it is highly possible to forgive someone and still not trust them. You can get past the offense and still not trust the person. Why, Williams? Tell me why. How can this happen? Because of the behavior of the person. That you can forgive them and the person continues to show you over and over and over again that they're not trustworthy because they keep giving you data points. Data points is nothing more than saying every time I look at the person, they give me one more reason from their actions, from their behavior, that they cannot be trusted. Next slide, please. And so I want you to know, while we are not commanded to trust, we are commanded to forgive. Search the Bible. I challenge you. Find me one scripture that commands us to trust somebody. No, we're commanded to forgive them. Forgiveness is something within your power to rebuild, even alone if necessary. Like you can rebuild your trust sometimes by just going into a solitary state. Sometimes that's the best solution. But trust needs a partner or it can't come to the prom. Oh my goodness. Trust needs a partner. You can forgive someone and you can do it alone. But trust needs a partner to come to the prom. There it is right there. Next slide, please. I want to talk to you today. Don't get it twisted. Your trust is built on a behavior. Next slide, please. Close for business. That you have to teach people that at some point you have to say, I'm closed for business. I'm not open for any transactions. Next slide, please. How long does it take to rebuild the trust? That's the $1 million question on the first Saturday in December. How long? How long, my friend, does it take to rebuild the trust? And so that's the problem when you run the risk of offending someone. And then you want them to hurry up and get over it. I'm sorry, my friend. It doesn't work that way. Trust is a process. And then you can speed up the process by your behavior. Like it has to be constant, continual, repetitive behavior. It has to be predictable. Like there cannot be this space of, they hit the mark today and here they go tomorrow, giving me the same reason not to trust them. How long? It's an individual case by case scenario. Next slide, please. So close for business. This is a deep probing question. How long? There is simply no easy answer. It leads to other questions. For example, how long does it take to rebuild trust? How deep is the wound? Because sometimes it could be something as simple as a very surface scar and it can heal easily. Or it could be something so deep that it requires traumatic attention. We call it in the trauma zone. We'll talk about that some other time. How fast does the victim take to heal? How patient are you to allow them to vent? Or when they cry, do you say, oh, Lord, here we go again? Or when they start trying to complain or really revisit it, how many times we going to talk about this? Or they go through mood swings because they're still trying to work through that process. Oh, my goodness. How long am I going to be going through this up and out? All of these are simple indicators that the trust is still in the rebuilding process. While the violations may have lasted only seconds, listen to this. It takes years sometimes to restore all that collapsed in those brief few moments. I want to say that again because sometimes people, they give you their offense and then they don't want to pay the price for what comes behind it. While the violation may have only lasted a few seconds, it takes sometimes years to restore all that collapse in those brief few moments. Next slide, please. And so here we have it today as we try to deal and make sense of this traumatic experiences that causes this hurt. Next slide. This notion that we're in this process of closed for business. Next slide, please. And so as we do this, trust restoration is a joint effort. There must be other qualities in the process if new construction is to withstand the test of time. Just remember, just a rebuilding of a home lost to a hurricane or tornado requires the collaborative effort of a construction team. Think about it. Carpenters, electricians, plumbers, just to name a few. So most we employ additionally. So we must employ additional workers to produce, you ready for this, our new building. I want to suggest to you that trust can rebuild those broken levees, but it requires additional workers to be brought to the construction site. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. Next slide, please. Today, good morning, Sister Ethel, all the way out of the Virginia area as well. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about. Those were principles again from the Let It Go book with Bishop T.D. Jakes. But I also wanted to talk to you today just briefly around the concept. I got about 5 to 7 more minutes. How, you may ask, can my wounded heart heal? And I wanted to walk through a couple of exercises with you that you can hopefully be able to walk through. How can my wounded heart heal? When you have a church hurt, think of the pain in your heart like a heart wound. As the psalmist says, the pain hurts to the depths of my heart. That's in Psalms 109. Listen, compare this pain, this church hurt, this family hurt, this work hurt, or this community hurt, this relationship hurt, this pain that you have in your heart with a physical wound, like a deep gash in your hand. How is a heart wound similar or different? Have you ever thought about that? That you hear people say, oh, my heart was wounded from that behavior. Most people don't put enough thought into a heart wound. For example, the next time somebody says, get over it, I want you to try to get them to understand the similarities between a heart wound and a physical wound. For example, a physical wound, when you cut or gash your hand, you can see the blood, the fluids coming out. We can see that there is damage. A physical wound is painful and sensitive. You see the cut and then somebody touch it, ow! We can see the expression from that physical wound. It needs to be treated. And watch this. If you cut your hand, any dirt or bacteria needs to come out and be clean. Think about it. When you have a physical cut, we immediately try to apply what we call first aid attention. And guess what? If it is ignored, watch this, the cut gets infected. And oh my goodness, we know that an infection just only compounds the problem. God heals, but he uses people like mothers and nurses and doctors to help us in that cut on our hand. It takes time to heal. You know for yourself, if you gash your hand and blood is gushing out, it don't heal that same moment. The body goes into a healing process. And the biggest takeaway of a cut is this: it may leave a scar. And then the scar becomes a constant reminder of the infraction, even after the wound has healed. After a traumatic experience, you need to take care of the wounds of your heart the very same way. To treat a heart wound, you need to express your pain. Find someone you can tell your story to. Someone who is able to listen without making you feel worse. Because sometimes you talk to people, they don't have the skill set, my friend. And when you finish talking to them, you actually feel worse than you did when you started. Listen to what Proverbs says. No one who gossips can be trusted with a secret, but you can put your confidence in someone who is trustworthy. Proverbs 11 and 13. There it is right there. A person's thoughts are like waters in a deep well, but someone with insight can drain them out. Oh my goodness. That's Proverbs 20 and 5. What I'm suggesting to you is ask God's guidance to give you someone that can be trustworthy. Now, I want to talk just for a moment about this word trustworthy. Trustworthy says that the burden is on me to be trusted. In other words, have I demonstrated to you that I can be trusted? That's what trustworthiness means. And so you have to find someone that has demonstrated to you that they can be trusted. Wait a minute, by their constant, repetitive, over and over and over behaviors that they can be trusted. And in this process, if you're the one that someone is coming to share their story, I want to give you 3 quick questions that you should ask. This will help somebody in that healing process. Number 1, ask them what happened. They need to be able to get those words, like Proverbs said, from way down deep in that well. But a wise person can help bring those words and those feelings up out of that deep well. By 3 questions. Number 1, what happened? Can you just say to them in your own words. You don't have to use no fancy words. Just tell me in your own way what happened. And then number 2, how did you feel? Because sometimes it will be the first time that the person has ever expressed to anyone how they felt. You would be surprised at we call it the gamut of array of emotions of how a person feels. And guess what? I'm a pastor, I'm a counselor, and I tell people, even in the grief process, that when something traumatic happens, there are 5 stages that you go through, even in the grief process, that the average person doesn't realize that sometimes 2 and 3 of those can be going at the same time. We can talk about that another time. You can feel free to just Google the 5 stages of grief. You would be surprised at how many stages there are. The research has been researched, and we can tell you. And then the third question is, what was the hardest part for you? Because can I tell you something? What you're trying to do is to demonstrate to that person that someone actually cares. And that the good news is God cares. Now, this listening exercise will allow them to finally express, and it'll also allow you to hone in on your listening skills with some very key questions in that conversation to help them understand you really are paying attention. And then when you finish, maybe you can write down some reflections to yourself. Did the listening questions help you clarify your feelings? Did they help you think differently about your experience? Did they help you try to explain your responses? And then another reflection question is, what was it like to share your story with someone else in this way? For the first time, sometimes you're going to find that people have gotten released because they were able to share their story. Now, not only can you tell your story to your friends, I want to close the day by telling you that you can also tell your story to God above. Be honest with God. Tell God exactly how you feel. Can I give you a secret? The master already knows. So talk about it freely. You don't have to hold back to God. Do you feel abandoned by God? Do you feel angry with God? In Psalms 42, David poured out his complaint to God. I want to suggest to somebody today that when you begin to deal with the church hurt, you have to be honest, and you have to find somebody trustworthy. Who is more trustworthy than God himself? God has given us example after example. Every single day we get up is another day's example that God can be trusted. We breathe his air. We use his energy. Listen, we use his intellect. All these things belong to God. There are many examples of people expressing their feelings to God in the Bible. These are called lamentations. Did you know that there are more lamentation psalms in the Bible than there are praise psalms? Absolutely. In a lamentation, people call out to God and they tell God their complaint. Why didn't you protect me? Where were you, God, when I went through this situation? How long will I continue to suffer from this situation. They tell God what they want him to do. And sometimes just that, he look at what has happened. Sometimes they remind themselves of how God helped them in the past. David in 2 Samuel 30 is a wonderful example. When he gets to Ziklag, my time is about out, but don't you fool yourself. Sometimes in telling God the process, it causes you to remember what he done in the past. In Ziklag, David and all of his men experienced a burglary. The Amalekites came and stole everything, including their family and wives, and everybody was lamenting. And finally, David says in Psalm and 2 Samuel 30 and verse 6, and David encouraged himself in the Lord. He had to use his past experiences to encourage himself in his current situation. That's all the time I have for you today. Lord have mercy. I hope that you have been able to have some insight today. Good morning, Sister Inez. God bless you all the way in Warrenton, North Carolina. I'm talking today as I bring this session to a close. Learn to talk to someone about your hurt. But they have to be someone who's trustworthy, that they have proven through their behavior that they're worthy to be talked to. And then secondly, have a little talk with Jesus. I promise you, if you have a talk with him, he'll make everything all right. I'm a living witness. And not only that, one of my favorite Psalms is Psalms 42. David poured Psalms 142. David poured out his complaint unto God, and God heard him, and God answered him. I want to talk to you today that you can be honest with God. He knows already what you're going through. And the beauty to this is simple, is that when you can't find no one else, you can have a little talk with Jesus, and he'll make everything all right. Remember this, that trust is a behavior as we close our session today, that you have to go on the constant, repetitive, habitual behavior of an individual to determine if they are trustworthy. I love you today, and that's all the time I have for you. I want to suggest to you today that you find someone in this process today. Tell your story to. Tell someone. And if nothing else, you can have a little talk with Jesus. Remember those 3 questions. Ask what happened. How did it feel? And thirdly, you have to demonstrate to yourself that when this situation is over, those 3 questions come back into play. Just keep in mind, once again, those 3 questions, I want to give them to you again. If you're writing down and taking notes, what happened? How did you feel? And what was the hardest part for you? You want to give those probing questions, because someone today is going to be set free, because finally they will probe into areas that they never had talked about before. And can I give you a secret? The more you bring those words from out of that deep well, the more liberation you will find. That life is worth living. And I want to tell you something, all because he lives. Can I pray with you today? Father, we thank you for time well spent today. I want to thank you, Father, for giving us the space to really encourage somebody that it's not as bad as it seems. I want to thank you, Father, for giving us space to remind somebody that this too shall pass, regardless to what they're going through right now. Give them the knowledge to understand that the storm is passing over. David declares in Psalms 30 that weeping endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I am so thankful that this too shall pass, and the sun will shine again. In Jesus' name, I thank you today. Listen, put your head up, because life is worth living. And I want to tell you something. Good morning, Dr. Carol Montague Davis, all the way from Winston-Salem as well. I just thank so many of you. Sister Nika Dixon, my God sister, listen, you know I thank you always for tuning in. My time is up, and I pray God's blessings on you. Until next time, God bless you.